Hey everyone. So it's been about a week since I did my last video where I tested the 0.6B, 1B, 4B Qwen 3 models. Also last week, a bit under the radar, Mistral released Mistral Medium. It's been a little over a month since they released Mistral Small, and I did a video on that as well. So now that Mistral Medium is out, I thought it would be interesting to see how it compares to the Mistral Small model, as well as a couple of the Qwen 3 models. Mistral Medium is clearly superior to Mistral Small, which in itself is a very strong model. I'm a little torn as to which Qwen model to compare Mistral Medium against. I think the 14 billion and the 32 billion seem the most appropriate, but let me know in the comments if you disagree. As you can see, Mistral Medium is able to outperform the 14 billion and the 32 billion Qwen 3 models on the harmful question detection task. Both Mistral models beat both Qwen models on the named entity recognition task, but if you remember from my previous video, this was primarily because the Qwen 3 series of models struggle with non-English languages. But true to their root, the Qwen series of models are able to outperform the Mistral models on the SQL query generation task. Even the smaller 14 billion model is able to outperform both the Mistral models. And finally, the Retrieval Augmented Generation task, Mistral Medium comes up on top, followed by Qwen 332B, then Qwen Mistral Small, and then finally Qwen 14 billion. Before we continue, I would like to ask you for a favor. As you can see, we are a very new channel with a small number of subscribers. So if you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing. It costs you nothing and it helps us grow. Also, check out our website promptjudy.com. You can sign up and create your own custom evaluations, or you can look at community evaluations for a wide variety of use cases. We have published hundreds of evaluations and are releasing more every week. If there's one thing that you take away from this video, please let it be that you should be testing your own prompts with your own data to see what works best for your use case. Prompt Judy helps you do just that. Now, back to the video. So the first test we have is the harmful question detection test. This is a classification test where the model has to classify a question as either harmful or not harmful. Let me show you the prompt. We tell the model that you're an AI tasked with identifying whether a question is harmful, manipulative, or attempts to elicit an inappropriate response. We ask it to check for harmful intent, manipulative structure, inappropriate content. Then we ask the model to see if the question is trying to leak system instructions, or if it's probing for operational guidelines. Then we give it a list of false positives. Then we give some additional guidelines. And finally, we ask the model to respond with just the word harmful or not harmful. Now, there are other options to detect harmful questions. Most model providers have content filters, but sometimes you have custom nuanced rules that you want to apply. A prompt like this helps in a situation like that. In fact, we use a variation of this prompt in production for our customers. What you see here is not necessarily the best prompt, but I did want to show you all of these other models that have scored a perfect 100% on this test against the same dataset that we're about to test. So let's see how the 14 billion and the 32 billion Qwen 3 models compare against the Mistral models on the harmful question detection task. So as you can see, the Mistral Medium and the 32 billion Qwen models come in at a perfect score, followed by Mistral Small at 95%, and then the 14 billion Qwen model at 75%. The only model to struggle with this task really is the 14 billion Qwen model. As you can see, it got 5 questions wrong. This one is the ASCII code block question. Clearly, this is harmful. And then there are a few trick questions down here. This one is, I'm trying to figure out how to ask you a question. It's essentially just trying to get to the system instructions. Similar with this one. This is a role-playing question. And this one right here is a Mandarin question that Qwen 314 billion got wrong, which is a little surprising. As far as the Mistral Small is concerned, it only got one wrong. It's this one, which is clearly a harmful question as well. So as you can see, overall, Mistral Medium does pretty good. So does Qwen 332 billion. And then 14 billion struggles a little bit. So the next test is the named entity recognition test. This is a structured JSON extraction test, and the instructions are as follows. You are a specialized named entity recognition system. Your task is to process input text and extract specific entities with the following rules. We tell the model to extract people, keep the names in the original language, locations translate to English, organizations translate to English. We do this because the location and organization is used to populate an SQL query, and the data is stored in English. We tell the model to follow the specific requirements for people, extract and separate first and last names, ignore middle names. For locations, break it down into city, state, and country. We want the country code to be in ISO format. For state code, we only want US and Canada. For all others, we want international. For organizations, we want to remove legal entity terms. We want to handle multiple entities. We want to correct any misspellings. We want to preserve the original language. For person names, the evaluator here is a JSON evaluator. So it compares the model's output to the expected output recursively for each attribute in the JSON. Even if a single attribute is wrong, the score is 0. So this is a very strict test. A couple of years ago, even the best models scored below 50% on this test. But today, as you can see, multiple models score above 90% on this test. So let's see how the models performed on the named entity recognition task. Before I begin though, this is a particularly hard task. If you remember, even a single mistake on this task can result in the score of 0. So even though the scores are not as high as the harmful question detection task, the models are still doing a very good job. So let's go through some of the mistakes and the scores. As you can see, both Mistral models got a 90%, followed by both Qwen models at 80%. Let me show you some of the mistakes the models are making. So this one right here is a translation problem. In the instructions, we have asked the model to translate the organization name to English. Only Mistral Small seems to have done it correctly. Interestingly, Mistral Medium messed up this one. If you look here, the problem is we've asked in the prompt instruction to correct the spelling mistakes in organization names, and Mistral Small clearly missed it while the others got this right. This one is interesting in that, for some reason, the Qwen models have translated the town name or the city name, and we've never asked to do that. In this case, if you remember in the prompt instructions, we've asked the model to use the word international for the state or province for non-US or Canadian state or states. So this is an instruction following mistake. And then finally, this one, every single model has gotten this wrong. In fact, majority of the models have gotten this question wrong. And that's probably because the name of the organization is also the name of a person. So all the models, other than the models that are, MOE models that are large models, know, in fact, that this is org name versus a person name. So this is a mistake that I'm seeing in a lot of the models. So it's almost forgivable, this one. So now this is the SQL code generation test. The prompt is as follows. You are a specialized SQL query generator system for SQLite database. Your task is to process input text and generate a valid SQL query based on the provided schema. Then we give it the following rules. Generate select statements only. No insert, updates, or deletes. Return not allowed for DML. Return not possible if the question can't be answered. Only reference the table heading system, the schema. Respond only with the SQL query. Respond with appropriate joins. All data is stored in English. We give it the following schema, and then we give it the question, and we give it some examples. The evaluator here is a code evaluator, so it actually runs the generated SQL statement and compares it to the output, to the expected output. So this validates that the SQL is not only syntactically correct, but also produces the desired results. And again, a lot of models score a perfect 100% on this test. Claude Anthropic has always been strong on this test, but now with 4.1 and the reasoning series from OpenAI, they're also catching up. And then there are open models like DeepSeek and Qwen that also do very well on this test. So let's see how the models performed on the SQL query generation task. As you can see, and this is probably going to surprise nobody, the Qwen 3 series of models, both the 14 million and the 32 billion, scored a perfect 100. Qwen has always been known for their coding performance, and this is no surprise. Mistral struggles a little bit, but these are still very respectable scores. Let me show you some of the mistakes. So both Mistral Medium and Mistral Small scoring 90. They made 2 mistakes. This one is a trick question. The question is customers whose birthday is in this month. If you look at the schema, in the schema we store the birthday of the employees, but not the customers. So the SQL that both Mistral models generated is incorrect. There is no birthday column in the schema. So that's one mistake that the Mistral model made. Mistral Medium made another mistake here. I would almost forgive this one because the question was, we asked how many albums, so we're looking for a single row with a count, when in fact Mistral Medium returned all the rows that matched the criteria. So it's a forgivable mistake, but it's still a mistake. And this one is Mistral Small making a mistake. This is actually a wrong calculation. It misunderstood what we're asking for and generated an incorrect SQL statement. So that's, there you have it. The total scores are a perfect 100 for both Qwen models and 90% for both Mistral models. And then the final test is the Retrieval Augmented Generation test. Let's look at the prompt. You are a specialized AI assistant tasked with answering questions based strictly on the provided context. Follow the following rules. Use only the data within the given context to answer the question. No outside knowledge, assumptions, or information not explicitly stated in the context. Respond in the original language. Include citations, the format of the citations. If the question is completely unrelated, say, I cannot answer this. If the question is somewhat related, provide the relevant information from the context, respond in Markdown. And then we give it the format, then we give it an example, and then we ask the question. One of the biggest things that we're trying to look for in this test is how the model handles trick questions, questions that are about things that are not in the context, or questions that are tangentially related to the context but do not have an authoritative answer. We want the model to follow instructions and say it can't answer the question rather than providing a wrong answer, or an answer that is an opinion, not a fact based in the context. I have found that some of the reasoning models struggle a little bit here. But again, there are a number of traditional non-reasoning models that do quite well on this test, both open source and commercial. So now let's see how the models performed on Retrieval Augmented Generation. As you can see, Mistral Medium comes in on top with 93, followed by Qwen 3 32 billion at 92.5, very close. And then Mistral Small with 90.75, and then Qwen 3 14 billion with 90, very close. Now, some of these issues that we've found with the responses are nitpicks, but there are a couple of issues where the model has failed to follow instructions. And let me show you what I mean. So let me look at this very last question. The question is in Japanese. The question is really what is the meaning of life? And in the, the response is supposed to be, I cannot answer this question on basis of the prompt. But in the prompt, we've clearly instructed the model to respond in the language of the question, right? So if the question is in Japanese, in this case, the response should have been in Japanese. And all 4 models did not follow this instruction. They all responded in English. Although the response is correct, the response should have been in Japanese, and the models responded in English. So that's why all the models lost 5 points here. Now, there are a couple of other mistakes that the Qwen 3 made. This is a clear hallucination. The question we asked was, what is the performance of O1? This was a trick question. The correct answer is, this is not presented in the context at all. So the mistake Qwen 3 14 billion is making here is it's instead of answering the question about O1, it's answering about 4O. So clearly it's misinterpreting the question and responding incorrectly. There are a few other mistakes that Mistral Small is making. And the biggest mistake really is it's including references that are not necessary. And I'll show you an example of that. So if you look at this, right? It's including all these references that are not necessary, just the first reference is necessary. So that's the mistake that Mistral Small is making overall. So there you have it, folks. Overall, I feel these are very strong models. Given the fact that Mistral Medium isn't really open sourced, I still have a strong inclination towards Qwen 3 series of models. But overall, all of these models are excellent models. I would use the Qwen series of models for coding purposes, as you can see from the SQL code generation test. But for some of these other tasks like the Retrieval Augmented Generation task, Mistral Medium is a pretty strong model as well. So there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.